Today we're going to talk about investigation campaigns, and I'm going to let you in on a little secret on how to keep your players interested, engaged, and wanting to solve your mysteries. I'm Razumazo, I'll be your game master for today. Investigation campaigns is something that many game masters struggle with, but if you put them together well, then your players are going to remember these adventures as some of the best they've ever had, because putting together clues to finally achieve a big revelation is just so satisfying as a player. First, I should say that investigation campaigns are not limited to the system that you use. I've played investigation in Dungeons & Dragons, for example, and Dungeons & Dragons is usually thought of as a combat system, but it can work quite well for investigation. So remember, investigation is not system specific. Actually, we're playing a D&D investigation campaign right now over on Twitch, so follow the link if you want to see how that is done. So where should you begin if you want to build an investigation campaign? Well, the first thing you need is a mystery. A mystery is something that your players need to figure out. Think of any good mystery movie out there and you have the main components. So something happened to someone and you need to figure out what and how and why. Easy. Now, let's talk about the plot. The most important thing for a game master is to understand the plot in detail. You need to know exactly what happened, when it happened, why it happened, and who did it. Who did it and how. Who did the thing? How did they do it? You need to add as much detail as possible so you can come up with clues as you go along in the campaign. As the game progresses, you might need to invent new things, and those things need to match the plot. You should think about what happened and when did it happen. You need to completely understand the timeline of the actual event of your mystery, but also what happened before and what happened after. And this is not because the players will be playing in this timeline, but they will be trying to reconstruct the events in their heads so they can understand what happened in your mystery. So you need to be perfectly clear on what happened and when. So why did they do it? You need to understand why the people who are involved in this mystery did what they did. So that is both the people who caused the mystery, but also everyone around it. Was it an accident? Was it a murder? Are they evil? Is it part of something bigger? You should know about this. It's a good idea to write all of these things down because that will help you when you suddenly need to come up with an NPC or a new clue, or if the players ask you questions, and then you need to be able to answer them immediately so it feels like you fully understand what is going on. Spoiler alert, you probably won't understand everything, but we'll get to that. And this leads me to scenes and clues. Every mystery investigation consists of scenes and clues, but you need to understand that this is not a movie, so you have no control over the order in which the scenes are presented. This is based on how your players act through the game. So that means you can have scenes that will never happen, you can plan scenes that will never happen, you can plan clues that will never be discovered. And this means that you need to design your scenes so they are so flexible that you can put them in different places, or you can change them as the game progresses. A lot of people recommend that you follow the 3 clues per scene rule. This means that in every scene you will put in 3 clues that the players can find. It's also often recommended that you make one of these clues a free one that the players will find almost no matter what. If you insist on adding 3 clues to each scene, then you can end up in a situation where your players won't find the clues, and then they will go into a dead end and they won't be able to actually solve the mystery or progress the story, and then you will have a lot more work to actually get the game going at the table. What I recommend instead is that you design your scenes to give your players 1 clue, and this clue has to be a clue that leads them to somewhere else. So it can be a clue that leads them to another scene or to an NPC. But you don't have to know exactly how you want to present this clue to the players in the scenes. And then besides this 1 clue per scene, you have a group of other clues that you just sprinkle in wherever you find them relevant. Let me give you an example. The party enters an apartment where there's a murder victim. You want to make sure that when the scene is over, they know that the murder victim had a relation to one specific NPC. So that is the 1 clue you want them to have. The players start asking questions. Because you know the motivations of all the NPCs and the murder victim, you can answer them. You might ask the players to roll some dice and dish out some of these clues you have so the players can get to know the murder victim better. Suddenly one of the players decides to move the fridge to investigate for clues there. And this is something you can use to provide them with your one clue, and you can make that player who moved the refrigerator feel really, really smart, even though he isn't. So you decide that the one clue you want to give them needs to be something that can be behind or under a refrigerator, so you come up with a business card. A business card pointing to that NPC that you want the murder victim connected to. If the players had decided to go through notebooks in their apartment or look at who the last call on the phone was, you could have provided them with the same information. It wouldn't have been a business card, it would have been a scribble in a notebook, or it would have been a phone number. But you would have connected the murder victim with your NPC, and you would have made whatever player came up with the idea feel really smart. Okay, I know what I'm talking about here requires some practice, so if you're just beginning, do this. For that one clue you want to give in your scene, come up with what it is. Is it a wallet? Is it a business card? Is it blood splatter on a wall? Something. And then you place that into the scene based on what the players decide to do. It really gives the players the feeling of being smart, and this engages them with the game. And it also helps you avoid the situation where you plan a clue somewhere in the apartment and the players don't look for it, and later on, because they don't have this clue, well, they get super frustrated and can't solve the mystery. This also gives you the option for handling the situation where the players, they just decide to leave before finding any clues. Then you can throw it in their face, like it could be an NPC who suddenly walks in as the players are walking out, and then he knows that the murder victim had a connection with this other NPC you want connected. So voila, they got their clue and won't end up feeling completely lost later in the game. And here's another tip. You should always make sure that the players have at least one clue to act upon. It needs to be an actionable clue, something they can actively go and do. They will most likely forget they have it, or get confused, or start discussing crazy theories, but they will have the clue and you can nudge them in the right direction if you need it. And this leads me to keep the information flowing. You need to make sure that the players always feel that they have something to do, something actionable. There is nothing worse as a player than having lots of clues but not understanding what to do with them. You will end up in a dead end and you will get super frustrated. If this happens to your players, they have too many clues, they don't know how to deal with it, I suggest you make up an NPC who arrives and helps them understand the clues, or you create a clue that connects the other clues together so you can nudge them in the correct direction. Maybe one of the relatives of one of the characters calls and provides some kind of insight into the clues. I did a video on how to flesh out your characters, and one of the tips was to always make sure characters have families. You can watch it by clicking this here. Voila, there you go. The point is, sometimes you need to help the players progress the story. They will end up in dead ends that they cannot get out of themselves. And to keep the game fun, you have to help them somehow. Change the plot to keep the players engaged. And yeah, I know I just asked you to outline the entire plot, but here's the thing. When you're playing through an investigation campaign, the players will have a lot of discussions and wild theories about what is going on with the mystery. Some of these theories will be quite good. Some of them will even be better than the one you had planned. So yes, I said it, your players will probably be better at coming up with plots than you are. The trick is to lift some of these ideas and integrate them in your plot. Change your plot just slightly. This will make the players who came up with the ideas, when they realize it was actually true, it will make them feel incredibly smart, and this will engage them even more with the story. So I'm not saying you should do this constantly and with every weird idea the players come up with, but just grab some of them and it will probably make your game even more fun, even for you. Now let's discuss how to handle dice rolling. Skills versus role-playing. Some players will expect to be able to just walk into a room, roll some dice, and you will tell them everything there is to know about this room. The player might say things like, I inspect the area for clues, or I want to roll investigation to find clues. I highly recommend that you discourage this type of behavior. When it happens in my games, I always ask the player, what are you exactly doing? What kind of investigation are you doing? Are you examining the door? Are you examining the floor? What are you doing? And then they can roll the dice. Because a lot of fun in investigation campaigns comes from coming up with great ideas to find clues. It doesn't come from just rolling dice and being told things by your game master. If you do it like that, it will eventually make the players very bored and unengaged from the game. Instead, you should really encourage your players to be specific about what they're doing. I investigate the carpet. I search if there are any footprints in the dust. I look for blood spatter. Then you can roll the dice and see what happens. And this is a really good place to drop in those other clues that you have, because it will make the players feel like if they hadn't investigated the door or investigated the carpet, then they wouldn't have found this clue. And of course you can roll dice as much or as little as you want. That is up to you. But just make sure it is because of an action the player describes. I can't stress this enough, but to play a good investigation game, you must focus on role-playing more than rolling dice. Now let's talk about magic. One place where investigation campaigns can become difficult to control for a game master is when you get magic or super technology involved. For example, if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons or Cyberpunk Red. Having access to magic lets your players investigate things in a different way than you can in the real world. But the thing is, you can plan for it. I absolutely need to stress that you should not ignore magic or technology or whatever it is in the system you're using. Don't take it away from the players. Whatever the player is capable of, he or she should be allowed to. If you just invalidate a player skill like magic, you will make the game less fun for that particular player, and they might want to create a new character or just not play anymore. But as I said, you can plan around it. So let's take an example. In D&D, there's a spell called Speak with Dead. This allows you to speak to a dead person. It's a spell that you can get access to at fairly low level, so your players will most likely have access to it. But does this mean that every murder is automatically solved by just asking the corpse who killed it? No. So first of all, remember that the murder took place in a world where the murderer knows that magic exists. The murderer probably knows that there is a spell called Speak with Dead. So the murderer will try and do everything possible to hide their identity so the murdered person can't point them out if this spell is cast on them after they died. This could be that the murderer was dressed up as someone else, just hit and attacked from the shadows, or maybe the murderer used magic after the murder. Second, remember that the dead person doesn't know everything. They only know up until their death and only what they saw. And finally, you can always make a fun scene where the dead person actually doesn't want to talk to the particular person who cast the spell. So there's a myriad of options to ensure that casting one spell, whatever it may be, will not automatically solve the entire mystery. However, when the player casts a spell like this, you should give them some kind of clue, some kind of information, or else we are gonna go back to the situation where they don't want to play anymore, they lose interest, maybe they will just leave your group. So don't do that. And now, finally, the big secret, the pieces don't have to fit. Remember that not all pieces in a plot has to fit together. When I first started out game mastering investigations, I struggled so much with making sure that every part of the plot fit together perfectly. But honestly, the players don't care. You'll quickly realize that your players don't care as much about plot holes as you do. Look at any Hollywood movie out there, you will see that Hollywood a long time ago understood that plot holes are okay, as long as the main mystery, story, NPCs and clues fit together. And if you have any plot holes and if the players comment on it, later on. You can always use these plot holes in later adventures, and then you will make the players think that you had it planned all along, even though you didn't. And with that, our time together comes to an end. Please click the like and the subscribe button. It really helps me out. And if you want to leave a comment, feel free to do so as well. I would also suggest you watch one of my other videos, like this one. Voila. And until next time, this is Razumazu signing off.